Myntri ke Sarkar jela ubadairu unong aiktin jong ke Sarkar MDA uba poleng do hanek sengi ulai tu baka kynhun Myntri kalai thir habun ki banta ki bai dei bar ke jela kawai ne kimat ki baka kynhun Myntri kalai keren ke dei halor kinong shong di jingdi madan ki badon hakaleng saudong ganong ba shilong habai keren kinong to kubor nakaleng uba poleng do ulai tu baka don ka anju ke Sarkar pedeng kabala Mynjur house nem arhajar khatsau Kabala tip kum ka Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act arhajar khatsau. Badai halor kanik bak Sarkar jela kala thawi kendon house nem arhajar arpuar. Nagalang ke kynhun Myntri hanek sengi kala Mynjur ya ka Draft Meghalaya Street Vendors Scheme arhajar arpulai bat ka thong jo ke Sarkar kalong bandon ke jing ya bianglang habdeng ke jing don kam ban im jong kinong shong surok badru ban pej bakadon ke jing singany kham tam ya kitu ke balej bawan nagalang Sarkar kala shim ya kanik sinjam da kaba kin sedang ban le yak survey ban tip bha hakinu ki jaka bakila ban shong madan mat hakinu ki jaka makin amsha shu ban shong shu nagalang Myntri uba poleng do ula ban rap da kaba ong bak Sarkar kala batha ya baro bagi dai ban penrung kerteng yala di langba kani ka skim mat kidai ru ban pynshisha bagi dai ke badon ya ka epic ka sernot bagi dai ke basyong basa ha ka jela kumba lais nem kidai ru ban pentip ha kinu ki jaka bagi syong dukan bat ha to ka jaka kidai ban syong la kumno riu benai ha bai dai bat kitu ke basyong sabar jong uput usam jong ka municipal kidai bandon ya ka trading license
on the first matter, which is the street vendors, as you are aware that there is a central act adopted, passed in 2014 called the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act of 2014, under which rules were framed by the state government in 2022. Now, as part of the process of the framing of these rules, a scheme was conceived known as the Draft Meghalaya Street Vendors Scheme 2023. And today this draft was approved by the Cabinet with few observations and amendments. Basically, the intention of the government is that we strike a balance between the need of providing livelihood to street vendors and the need to also ensure that other equally important issues like law and order, decongestion, and safety to pedestrians, and the fact that as we observed in the recent fire incident, how street hawkers were a major cause of the delay in the intervention by the fire services in containing the inferno at Kandailat. So today, the scheme was approved, and the salient features of this scheme I can share with you. But broadly, it speaks of town vending committees who will be eligible to be identified as legal hawkers. There are a set of criteria clearly laid down. For instance, the person has to possess an epic issued by the Election Commission of India, plus a certificate of at least 3 years residence in Meghalaya. The vendor should have been vending in a particular spot for a minimum of 6 months, and 3, he possesses a valid trade license in areas that are outside of the 3 normal areas under the control of the Shillong Municipal Board. We have also received a number of suggestions from various stakeholders, including the KHADC, KSU, Sanjog Kirangba Shnong, Hawkers Associations, and today, after very detailed discussions, we have been able to finalize this scheme, and what we will now do next is to immediately take up an inventarization. We will start with the survey of the street vendors and process the applications of these vendors based on the broad framework which I have spelled out. Then we will also be taking up this special planning in order to decide which are vending and which are no vending zones. And the government would also strive to provide dedicated vending zones and market spaces to the street vendors. So broadly, this is what the scheme is as conceived earlier and as approved by the cabinet today.
So,
will we go to power department first? Trading or vending in a particular place for a minimum of 6 months, and also that they possess a trade license based wherever the Trading by Non-Tribals Act is applicable. Okay, based on their having met these conditions, we will then separate, the legal from the illegal, and only legal, authorized, registered vendors will be given spaces in the vending zones.
Bapa, what about these vendors who are occupying the footpaths and whereas pedestrians are
that is the task before us is to decide on which are the vending and which are the no vending zones, and obviously footpaths will not be allowed to be declared as vending zones.
Which are the areas which are most likely to be vending zones?
Which are?
The areas in town which are more likely to be.
No, based on the based on this master plan and the identification of zones will be based on certain criteria. For instance, we will make sure that these zones will not impede the movement of traffic, the movement of pedestrians, will not cause law and order issues. Those are factors that will be taken into account.
But will these vending zones be an open area or building?
We are at the moment talking about open spaces. But when you talk about the matter that you brought up, this relates to markets. We have a plan in mind to also construct hawkers markets as an.
So as per your data, what is the report of how many legal and illegal hawkers in the state?
There's no legal, there's no illegal as of now because the scheme has not been in place.
No, but the figure, the
Roughly
figure of
number
legal
of
hawkers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
roughly maybe in not only in municipal area but outside municipal area maybe. Is it also outside municipal area you're talking about?
All.
We don't have that, but more or less
Shalom.
3,000 will be there.
But there are hawkers who have already registered themselves with the office of SM.
This is a specific scheme that only today received the approval of the cabinet. So this scheme will ensure that the registration process is
Legally
legal now, because this scheme is part of a central act, and we are framing the rules and the scheme in accordance with that central act.
We do have 2 types of hawkers, we may say. One is who sit in the same place, and the other one is mobile hawking. And is there any plan that you will do something for this mobile hawking also?
Once an area is declared as a vending zone, it will apply to everybody. And likewise, a no vending zone. You see, as I mentioned earlier, under this central act, okay, the state had only adopted the act in 2022, right? So that was just last year. And today, the government, if you talk of government, this government is barely 7 months old. So now that we are seized of the enormity of the problem, we are determined to, as I said, have a fine balancing between somebody's need for livelihood and others' need for safety and free movement and not causing inconvenience to pedestrians or motorists, which is why this scheme has been envisaged and approved by the cabinet today.
Will this particular act be applicable to 6 scheduled areas also, where the falls under the jurisdiction of the KJDC?
Yes. As I mentioned, the requirement for a trade license would mean that it is applicable in areas outside the control of the municipal boards. See, as of today, this is an unregulated trade, right? Where you don't even know the exact number of persons involved in that trade. Whether we would know whether that person who avails a license would today sit in ïaka and tomorrow shift to polo. So how do you regulate unless you have this scheme in place? So, which is why today we have approved this scheme in order to be able to regulate vending, and it is only when we do that that any authority can, issue licenses. And for instance, there is a role for the Darbar shongs, okay, that they shall also have to furnish a certificate from the respective Darbar shongs. Now, unless you have a scheme in place, how does the Darbar issue a certificate for somebody who keeps moving from one locality to the other?
So are we to understand that this survey also will, facilitate the process of registration of all hawkers and vendors in Shillong?
Yes, the whole purpose of the scheme is to facilitate registration of these hawkers based on certain parameters, and once they fulfill the criteria as defined by those parameters, we will then have a list, and this list will be put up before the vending committees, the town vending committees, which will then approve the list accordingly.
Stationary hawkers. A person, a mobile hawkers need not be a vehicle hawkers also. It may be a person who is carrying vegetable from one place to another place. So it includes all that. And we will have also a special thing called night hawking, which we will declare some particular zone for night hawking from a particular time, from a certain time to maybe 7 to 10 or whatever. Okay, so hawkers that are day hawkers, there are night mobile hawkers, and a night hawking zone will be also planned. According to the planning authority, we will have some night hawking also. But for me, we will have some area specified, sir. This scheme will specify the area, how much it should occupy, what will be the vertical thing.
Kani kajing ong kajong ki bakin shong kat bakiman, sisin bagi la declare menta ngila map shoi area. Ngila map nang tu ngin sa declare kino kideki vending, kino kideki no vending zones. Kino ki jaga belong kan kai, kino ki belong. Dalam dep kata ngila buru ba the prescribed dimensions along 2.2 square meter area and not more than 3 meters for vertical vending from the ground. Madan Shalor.
And which street will be one side, which street will be both sides, all that is specified in the